Good afternoon and welcome to the Hibs Observer afternoon briefing with myself, Liam Bryce, joined by Craig Nisbet to look back over Hibs' 3-1 win over Ross County at Easter Road on Saturday. A huge, huge victory in the context of the season for David Gray's side, lifting them up and out of the relegation zone, and perhaps now, for the first time, maybe able to start looking up the table instead of just trying to simply drag themselves off the very bottom. But we'll get to the sort of longer term, at least, outlook as we go on. But we're going to get stuck into Saturday's game. All the key incidents, all the goals, the tactical approach, everything you could possibly imagine. Craig, first things first, though, how are you?
I'm good, mate. It's nice to be talking about a Hibs win with you. I think maybe St Johnstone, maybe the last time we ever got a win.
Because
So
I wasn't. I don't know, was I around? I don't think I was here for the Motherwell game.
that
No,
was Patrick. So it's
no.
a rare occurrence for
Aye,
us.
exactly. So if you're you're just tuning in, this is, can I stress how much in the last, I can't remember when we started having you on, but it's been a long time, and there's been
Yeah.
not an awful lot of victories for us to for us to analyse it. So we're going to make the absolute most of this because you don't know where the next one is coming from. I mean, hopefully next Saturday, but who knows? Who knows with this team? But for now, it's all positive, good vibes, you might say. As is our sponsor, Good Vibes Giveaways. So just as always, just a quick word for them. Good Vibes Giveaways are proud to sponsor the Hibs Observer and offer fantastic prizes to fans of the club. Prizes change weekly and include second gadgets, days out, weekends away, tax-free cash, and even Oasis tickets. So get your tickets now at www.goodvibesgiveaways.com and enter for your chance to spread the good vibes. Just also a wee plug for ourselves, folks. If you're watching us on YouTube and you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, I would really ask if you could consider just spending a couple of seconds and clicking that button and subscribing to our channel, because obviously we're pushing towards that 1,000 mark. We've had a lovely wee jump over the past week or so. So thank you to everybody who has joined us, but that we're really pushing on for that milestone. And it's not just for us. If you do watch these videos but you haven't subscribed, because we can see the data, and there are plenty of you out there who watch these videos and you've not subscribed yet, it means you get notified every time we go live, so you don't miss a show. So on to the important stuff, Craig. Saturday's big win over Ross County. Again, I think I said this to Patrick in the instant reaction afterwards. It's kind of hard to understate how important it was just for Hibs to get 3 points on the board at the weekend, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I think with the next couple of games that we've got, obviously Aberdeen away and then Hearts, it's it was really vital, I think, to get the win, to get a home win as well, just to give the fans, something going into that sort of Christmas period. So we'd said for a while on the show about just getting that kind of messy kind of victory, one that maybe you don't play as well and get the result. I actually think against Motherwell we actually played all right, when we got the result. But this one was probably a little bit less, in terms of performance, it wasn't our best, but, we ground out and we, I think in the end we deserved to get the win.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I can argue with that. The team pretty much, I think it was pretty much as I expected. It was just, I think that maybe the only question was, how exactly would they line up? Would it be kind of closer to the 3-4-3 that we saw at Celtic Park, or would it be more back to this setup that we can see here with kind of Junior Hoylett, sort of in that number 10 role? He did have license to roam. There's always kind of a question over who's going to start at right back. Is it going to be Chris Carden? Is it going to be Lewis Miller? But Lewis Miller was seemingly out injured, seen him sitting up in the stands. But the rest of it, kind of pretty much what you expected.
Yeah, we've said before that, we need to build some consistency, and unfortunately week to week we seem to pick up knocks or suspensions or something that means we can't always name the same 11. So I think, we have to go as close to the same group of players as we can. And it's disappointing for Miller because I think, he frustrates people. I know that, and he frustrates me, but, he does contribute going forward, and he does give us a good physical presence, which we'll probably get into when we discuss the set pieces. And then, I think, I think our theory on Dwight Gale probably not coming on against Celtic was so he could put in a big shift in this game. So it was good to see him start. And, yeah, obviously Hoylett and Johan there's pretty much our best sort of attacking threats, probably at the moment, just in terms of where we are. I did sort of think I thought although he did okay and he grew into the game, Nicky Cadden, I think I probably prefer him further forward.
Yeah.
And I think we maybe lose something with him there. However, him and Yuan grew into the game and had a fairly decent partnership. But yeah, it's probably something for Gray to consider in these next couple of games. But yeah, pretty consistent, and yeah, pretty happy going into the game with that setup.
Yeah, just a quick run through as always. This is the expected goals race chart from our stats partners, StatsBomb, and it basically just tells you the story of the game in terms of chances created. You can see here that first half is pretty much, I think, what you'd expected before looking at this. Not an awful lot there from Hibs. Obviously, the goal comes right on the stroke. Well, yeah, pretty much. It was pretty much the last action. The first half shouldn't have been the last action of the first half. If you listen to Don Cowie, James Brown from Ross County, we'll maybe touch a bit on that later on. But I mean, the second half there, you can see the difference in how Hibs approached it. Lots of chances there, maybe kind of lots of wee half chances, and then obviously you see the big jump in expected goals with the 2 penalties. Second one converted by Eli Yuan, obviously the first one Jack Hamilton saving from Nicky Cadden, and then you can see the third goal at the end put it beyond doubt. I mean, slight wee jump at the end for Ross County. There was that period where they sort of threw caution to the wind. They had nothing to lose at that point, started piling bodies forward and throwing crosses into the box, and you could feel the kind of anxiety around Easter Road at that point. But I mean, you can kind of see there that as much as it was maybe heart and mouth stuff, waiting to see what happens when that ball gets launched into the box, they didn't really create anything. Hibs stood up to it pretty well in the end. So is this kind of, you can see at the top there as well, they do like a sort of probability of victory or of the result based on chances created. Hibs up there in the 90s as how the game panned out. StatsBomb have given them that probability of victory. Ross County just 2%. So it shows you that Hibs were the team that were well on top throughout the game, even though it wasn't for at least the first 45 minutes. Not a great performance. Does this kind of align, Craig, with what you saw on the day?
Yeah. I think obviously, we say goals change games, and I think Ross County getting one so early then gave them something to hold on to, and you could see that they did have a couple other chances. Nisbet had a strike early on that Smith saved, and then after that, you could see they were probably sitting back and then probably looking at us on the counter attack, knowing that we would have to push forward. And again, I think getting the goal before half time, is a big one for us. Probably changed the course of the game, and I think we came out the start of that second half and, early chances for Newell and Yuan, and we just sort of grew into it from there, and they sort of just regressed a little bit. And then obviously when the penalties came at really good times, obviously we didn't take the first one, but the second one. And then after that, they bring on Jordan White, they bring on Ronan Hale, they're going big and going into the box, and then it obviously gives us the chance to counter attack, which we took at the end. So yeah, a bit nervy at 2-1, got to be honest. That little flurry of corners they had was really, really concerning. But, we stood up to it, and I think Gray made some good subs and tweaked things a couple of times in that latter part of the second half, and it obviously led to us getting a counter-attack and seeing the game off, which was a fitting way to end the game.
Yeah, it must have been a nice feeling to see a goal scored in stoppage time at Easter Road rather than one.
That's very true.
Conceded. I know there were a couple against Aberdeen a few weeks back, but these have kind of generally been the exception rather than the norm. So I think kind of touched on this with David Gray at the end of in his post-match press conference. It feels like, or at least it should, I think, the way that game finished, seeing it out, standing up to a bit of pressure, going and scoring a clinching goal, it should be, famous last words, but it should be like a good psychological hurdle to clear for this team. That they can see games out, that they can go and score, to put it to bed, rather than the other scenario that we've seen an awful lot recently.
Yeah, and I think that's it. The Aberdeen game was, we showed that kind of grit and determination to come back and fight till the very end and get a draw. And Motherwell, we've shown that we can sweep teams if things go our way and we get things right. And in this game here, again, it's a different side of us. You go a goal down, but you battle your way back and see the game out. Which so I suppose the team in one way is evolving on that front. In terms of performances, and even last week, to touch on the Celtic game, we all agreed it was a brilliant performance, just missed opportunities that, again, if you take one of those opportunities, you never know how that game could end up panning out. So yeah, you can definitely see some improvement.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair to say in various kind of areas. We'll look here at Hibs passing network throughout the first half on the left there, second half on the right. Obviously, you can see David Gray's making subs as the game goes on, but this just gives you a kind of idea of average positions, the sort of different combinations. Obviously, you can see lines there between the individual players. The kind of thicker those lines, the more passes were exchanged. The bigger the circle around a player, the more passes they played. Just draw your attention to Nicky Cadden high on the left there. That sort of red circle. Basically, StatsBomb, they use this metric called on-ball value, but it's basically kind of how did a player's actions progress a team towards scoring a goal. And the red circle there is obviously that's a good indication that a player did that. I know Cadden missed the penalty, but it shows you kind of what his all-round sort of contribution might have been. So we've got a couple of points to go through here. Really, I think you can see how high Hibs sought to push Cadden in that first half, especially compared to his brother over on the other side, and especially in the second half, you can see Chris Cadden's average position was dropped that wee bit further back, while Nicky Cadden's was roughly there or thereabouts the same. So I mean, and also the other thing that it quite clearly demonstrates here, and Craig, you were talking about this before the show, is just how much of Hibs' play was concentrated down that left-hand side.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that since we've, even before we went to the back three, but more so since we have done, is we tend to look to play out down the left, and whether that's with Obita on that side or Nicky Cadden, and I thought that in the first half that, and we'll look at that in a couple of clips, that we were focused on going down that side, and a few times actually we did well to kind of drag Ross County over to that side and get them in, and we just never quite switched the play when we had the chance to maybe get Chris Cadden into a better area. But yeah, you can see that Iredale obviously having quite a lot of the ball, especially when we were playing out. And it's interesting actually seeing Ellie highlighted where he was, because I thought he exchanged quite a lot of passes. He did pick the ball up in a slightly deeper position.
He was making a deliberate effort to get into that area, I thought.
Yeah, he was. And actually, I think I've not actually seen these, and I think one of the clips I've highlighted is actually him picking the ball up in exactly that spot. So I think they were obviously trying to disrupt Ross County as much as possible, because they were just going to sit in a really low block. So yeah, it's one thing that I suppose it's as we evolve as a team and as things progress, it's just something to be wary of, that teams will know we're going to go down that side, so probably deploy resources there to stop us. And I think it's just making sure that we're able to then switch the play and go down the other side, because then you've got a bit of pace with Chris Cadden. Obviously, we've seen the quality of Junior Hoylett for the goal. So it's quite an interesting an interesting look. And also actually with Dwight Gale, because I actually sort of thought again in the first half he was coming across to the left-hand side quite a lot, and trying to get involved in the build-up, which was then sometimes leaving us a little bit short in the box. So again, it's interesting, and it's obviously, because we have to keep chopping and changing players, it's very different having Dwight Gale up front to Kurevich, in terms of their style and how they press, how they play, how they look for the ball. So I think, considering Gale's not had much minutes, I thought, we actually, from the first half and how we took that then into the second half, we did pretty well there.
Yeah, Gale's, he's one of those, he's an intelligent player, so he's, he'll know areas to sort of instinctively where to be when the ball's in certain areas, and I thought he did well enough. Obviously, he took his goal very, very well. We'll get to that as we go through, but obviously things did not start so well whatsoever. We'll touch on the first the only Ross County goal, in a moment. But I mean, they could have scored even earlier than that. It took a really good save from Jordan Smith to keep them out just prior to this corner.
Yeah, it was a long ball, I think, and Samuel kind of got the run on. I actually thought Samuel did pretty well in the game. I thought he was quite industrious, put himself about, caused us a bit of problems. And yeah, him and Rocky got for the ball. And I think O'Hora and Iredale just presume that he's going to win it, and he doesn't. And it's that thing where, if your middle centre half of a three goes to attack the ball, the other two just have to kind of drop in really quickly. And I think Chilvers then just gets the run on them, runs through, and it's a really, really good save from Smith. And yeah, it's obviously then from the corner, we get ourselves here. And I suppose that the two players we sort of have to highlight before we maybe finish on a wider discussion about the setup is Eli Yuan there picking up Campbell, who eventually gets the goal, and Nicky Cadden, who's picking up Allardyce just in the sort of middle picture there, just with the sort of purple circle around the bottom of him. And yeah, if you go into the next clip, just you can see that the corner kick is just about to come in. Here it's just, this is where the first contact's made with the ball, and you can already see Ellie's lost the man completely. And with Campbell getting the run on him, and then you can see Allardyce there just almost kind of shoving Nicky Cadden kind of out the way to get up for that next ball. Of course, then Allardyce makes the first contact with the header, which I think is in the next clip.
Yep.
And I suppose I wanted to kind of highlight from that alternate angle because, you've got a few players, look at the amount of Hibs players that are around that. And, Newell's just, to be fair, Newell's kind of coming in off his other man, and Nicky Cadden's just been caught under the ball. But a free header in that position's just, it's just unacceptable, isn't it? We can't afford to let that happen. Obviously, it then hits the post. And to be fair to Campbell in terms of his follow-up, and I didn't really notice this at the time, it was only when I watched it back a couple of times that he sort of heads it back across, and it's like the spin of the ball takes it into the net. It's like it's a pretty good finish. And of course, there, even as that contact's made, Yuan's just a little bit out of position, and because we've not stuck anybody on the goalkeeper, which I thought was quite interesting. Obviously Samuel went in to sort of stand around on Smith. There was a quick VAR check about a potential offside, but you can see he's just on there, and then it's a ridiculously good header back across goal in terms of the finish.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure. Do you think he meant it, or was he just trying to
get
it
back across goal? I think he's going back across goal, and I actually think Iredale kind of runs after the ball, and then it looks like he gets caught a little bit by the spin. But obviously, it's a really poor start. But it kind of got me thinking when I watched it back a couple of times about our setup, because I don't know how you feel about this, but Hoylett's obviously, I suppose, kind of technically picking up Chilvers towards the edge of the box there. We've got nobody in and around Smith, which I sort of, he's not very comfortable and confident coming for the ball. So I suppose if a striker is putting pressure on him, you hope that we maybe get the foul out of that. I can imagine the rationale behind that. But it's just that you look at the players we've got marking, when you look at, for me, like Triantis and O'Hora, probably your other two big players compared to what we've got, or at least players that can attack the ball. In terms of O'Hora, we know is quite good in the attacking end anyway, goes up for set pieces, has contributed with a goal. I just don't know how I feel about that four in that kind of zonal position, especially when it means you're then having to rely on, Yuan and stuff like that for marking, which isn't his strong suit. And on top of that, we then have everybody back in the box. Yeah, which means if we do clear it, we're probably then on an immediate, we'll lose possession, and then they'll regain it, and then they're putting the ball back in as we're a bit disorganised. So I don't know. What's your thoughts?
I'm not a huge fan of it, to be honest, for the reasons I think that you've outlined there. I mean, there are some guys. I think I can say this because we're going to give Elliot Yuan quite a lot of praise today, but I think in some instances, he loses concentration at times. And I think there are some guys that you just maybe don't want in and around these situations. If you can keep them up at the top end of the pitch where if the ball breaks, if there's a counter-attack to be had, then that's when they can be effective. But sometimes it's like, I think you talk about that, it's a kind of trope almost, like, sometimes you don't want too many attacking players who are maybe not as switched on at times defensively in and around and having big jobs to do as well. So I don't know. I don't know if it's just the kind of bias of conceding poorly from a set piece at the weekend that's making me think, well, is this not a great way to go about things. I mean, Hibs have been good. We did a piece looking at how they've improved attacking set pieces, which they have. They're up there with the most effective in the league. Obviously, that's not just corners. We're talking about free kicks, free kick crosses, direct free kick goals, even I think if it counts, I think it might count on StatsBomb. I don't know. Even one was assisted from a throw-in this season, so there's been a lot of kind of variety, and then decent variety in the attacking corners, which I'm been quite impressed with. But this, I don't know.
Yeah, and the other bit for me is just if you look at the four there, like I think if you're going to put Triantis there, then I sort of think, why do you need Chris Cadden in that area? Do you know what I mean? There's two of them there. And I just, I think if that ball's going to go into that space, then, Triantis could cover that. That could free up Cadden to pick up Campbell, and then you could leave Ellie further up the pitch, and at least you've got an outlet. You win the ball back, you thump it into space. He's got the pace to recover, and listen, the rest of the set pieces, we were fairly resolute in terms of how we defended them, although there was a few heart and mouth moments. But, we've touched on set pieces before with them, and it is tricky, especially I suppose when, in terms of height, when you've got like Miller missing, Kurevich missing, we're actually quite a small team in comparison. So it's just one that I just, it's maybe one for fans and, people tuning in just to keep a wee eye on, because I'm quite intrigued by that, our sort of setup, because obviously we lost an own goal against Celtic last week and things like that. So I'm always intrigued to see the setup and how it changes from week to week. But yeah, it just doesn't seem right to me. But
because it is fairly unusual in terms, I think, I don't think I can't profess to watch loads and loads and loads of different teams, but in terms of having everybody back for these situations, it does seem a wee bit unusual. So yeah, want to keep an eye on and see how that progresses over the coming weeks. Just to kind of move things on, obviously the onus was then on Hibs to make things happen. Ross County, as you said at the top of the show, gave themselves something to hold on to, and it was then up to Hibs. They basically challenged Hibs to say, right, come break us down. So how did Hibs try to do that? How did Ross County try and stop them?
So what they did a lot of basically was Chilvers and Samuel essentially just tried to leave Rocky on the ball. And, if the ball went wide to Iredale or O'Hora, then they started to press. And, like we've seen teams before. I remember like when we played a 4 under Montgomery and we had Rocky playing, most teams just sort of let him take the ball and stop the pass going out the other side and then sort of pressed him aggressively. But Ross County didn't do it amazingly well, and they didn't. We still found lots of space in different areas. So here you can see like Iredale's kind of looking for the ball there from Rocky, because Yuan's pulled into that space on the left sort of side. You can see Nicky Cadden in the top right-hand corner is now moving inside the pitch to sort of pick up the space that Yuan would normally be, take Brown inside with him to leave Yuan space to run into. And then I've just highlighted that midfield because, they kind of were tight in together, which again, you don't mind because it's keeping Ross County close in and tight, which is again leaving space in those free areas and space for Ellie to get on the ball. And then I think if you jump into the next clip, this is him then getting possession when it comes back out, and you can see Brown's kind of running at that point. Ellie's taking a touch and going, and he's sort of in this 1v1. I think from probably a Ross County perspective, they're maybe saying, well, we're happy with Ellie Yuan on the ball that far away from our goal. Like, we can manage that. You can see there that Nicky Cadden's trying to race down, like kind of, he's done the movement in the pitch, he's now doing the movement out the pitch to try and combine. But unfortunately, like apart from those two in that rotation, we just didn't have much else, and we sort of became like a tiny little bit predictable. And I think that kind of contributed to us just sort of struggling a little bit. And again, like Nicky Cadden and Yuan together, it was like another change in terms of who's playing where and what positions. And earlier on in the season, it was Hoylett and Obita who had built up a bit of a partnership and on that side and things like that. So I sort of thought we were trying the right things at times, but we just unfortunately weren't consistent enough. And it was frustrating because actually Ross County weren't particularly set and, you know, causing us loads of difficulty, but we were just sort of causing ourselves a lot of problems really when we were playing out. And I think in the next clip, we actually do well here to sort of drag it. You can see we've kind of got lots of Ross County players on one side of the pitch. Yuan's just about to go into Newell, and at that moment, and he done it. He did it last week against Celtic. Like, he's capable of dribbling here. If he just outside of the left boot twists here, turns, and we can switch the play, then you're pretty much got like a 2v1 on the other side with Chris Cadden and Hoylett there. And unfortunately, we went actually in this point, Newell goes into Nicky Cadden, he gets pressed really quickly and the ball gets turned over. So I sort of thought like what we were trying to do, we kept going down that side, and I thought if we're doing that to drag them over and hit a switch play, then it's perfect. But unfortunately, we just weren't doing it, and then we weren't going down the right hand side and trying that sort of way. So everything just kept getting funneled down the left, and you know, it's obviously where, you know, Yuan and Nicky Cadden are our most creative players, so of course you want them on the ball a lot. But you know, I just think that we probably have to mix things up a little bit, or at least try and switch the play at times to try and open the game up.
Yeah, I think that's fun. Because I feel like at times we have seen that switch, and you know, like the likes of Joe Newell, he can do it.
Yeah,
as well, and which made it kind of all the more surprising. I thought that it was quite limited in that sense. Obviously, I can see exactly what you're saying there in terms of trying to get your most creative players on the ball. Yuan being probably the most creative player, and then you've got Nicky Cadden, arguably the most informed player, attacking player over the last few weeks. Obviously, you've got Gale drifting over into that area as well. So it makes sense to try and maximise that, but it did become a bit one note, didn't it? Which was, again, which becomes a problem against any side. Just to take it on a wee bit.
Yeah, and it's the same thing, you know, sort of 20 minutes or so into the game, you can see again, like I thought Rocky was I sort of thought he was quite nervous looking actually. In the last few games, he's looked quite resolute and confident on the ball. And like against Celtic, I thought he played out really, really well. But in this game, I don't know if it was the early goal and the nerves or whatever it was, but he just seemed really, really unsure of himself. And actually, you can see O'Hora, and I was kind of watching them, they were trying to direct things down that side because clearly that's what they were wanting to do. And like you can see there, like Chilvers is too far over there, so it's easy for Iredale to go and step forward with the ball. I didn't think he did as much step forward and playing like he has done in the past. I thought he was quite safe. Again, just like passing it to somebody and then dropping back and not quite trying to play those line splitters. But you can see, again, it's the same movement. Yuan dropping in, Nicky Cadden coming inside the pitch. And then if you go into the next clip, we actually end up working the ball back across. So Iredale comes back. And then for one of the only times in the game, Rocky actually steps forward with it. And he dribbles, he's encouraged to go forward. And you can see Eli Yuan pops up in that space, just sort of where he was on the pass network. And Rocky fires that split right into him. And you can see there, then suddenly we've got a 2v1 against Brown on that side. You can see Gale's pulling off the centre halves, getting ready to go into the box. And again, I made a note in my phone to be like, right, here we go. That's the first one. I'll count how many times it happens from then, and that can be a segment on Monday's show. But unfortunately, it didn't happen, and I didn't clip a moment. But there's a moment in like maybe the 30th minute, I think, where we play out from the back. Rocky strides forward. It's Hoylett that drops into a similar space, and he tries to hit a switch to Nicky Cadden, and he ends up like shanking it, and it goes straight out for a throw-in. I don't know if you remember that in the game, and it was just sort of like you could see everybody looking, going like,
you
know, at that point the passes and stuff were on. So it was just frustrating, and obviously we are a team that's still developing and things like that. But it's sort of like, you know, we found the fix, and we found that, you know, and Ross County weren't doing things particularly well, and it's just like we did it once and then just abandoned it and like forgot what to do and then repeat, and it was just a bit frustrating. And because like we get ourselves into good positions like this, and you know, we get early on the ball, but unfortunately we just didn't do it too often in the game.
Just think there was a bit of nerves all round in that first half on Saturday. You know, you talk about Iredale maybe not doing the good things that he did against Celtic and he's done in previous weeks' play. You know, I think one of the most telltale symptoms of there being a bit of anxiety in the team is playing safe. And was it maybe the importance of this game and the expectation and the sort of, maybe the thought of if where Hibs would end up, in terms of the sort of narrative around the team, where they'd end up back to if they didn't win. Do you think they sort of felt that a wee bit in the first half?
I think so. I think the early goal rocked them.
That changes them. Yeah, that is obvious, isn't it? Aye.
And I think that really rocked them. And I think that then there was, I wouldn't say the atmosphere was too toxic.
I've heard it worse.
I've heard it worse as well. And I think there was a real belief behind them. But yeah, I think there was just that, we're a goal down. That's happened really early. If we go 2 down here, we're going to be in big trouble. So maybe people just playing within themselves just a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I think if you go into I think the last couple of points on the build up, really, again, we were able to sort of get into positions like this. Again, this is when we work the ball from Iredale. It goes into to Nicky Cadden. This was probably our best little bit of play. Obviously, this time Nicky Cadden's dropped a bit deeper. You can see Brown's really, really far off him, sprinting across there. Ellie makes a good movement. The yellow movement is where he goes forward, then he drops back. They have a decent little 1-2 here in the next clip. And we get that little ball in behind. But I'd say that took us 25 minutes to really exploit that side. Even though we had a lot of possession down there. It just seemed that when we were getting into these areas that we were just sort of second guessing ourselves in terms of what we do, which it was really frustrating and sort of made for quite a slow sort of first half.
Yeah, it was a bit ponderous up until the goal. I'm just going to bring in this comment here because it's not the first time I've seen this criticism, and I think I've certainly seen it a few times during the game and then kind of afterwards as well. It was just an accusation that the 2 centre midfielders, which were Joe Newell and Nectar Triantis, weren't showing enough for the ball. But was there? I mean, you were talking earlier on about the 2 of them being quite tight in together centrally. Was there something going on there, you think, to try and free up space in the wide areas, or do you think that's a fair criticism? Do you think it's a harsh criticism? Is there any? Can you shed any light on that?
It's interesting because it's actually my next note was the other bit that really frustrated me, especially when you could see Rocky was struggling a bit, was that Newell or Triantis didn't really drop much to try and get on it. I think Newell did towards the end of the half. I remember him dropping in to try and get on it a little bit. And again, Ross County, they're not going to send a midfielder pressing Joe Newell into the back line. So, we just didn't really try any other options. And it is difficult when you play a 3 at the back. If a midfielder then drops in, suddenly you've got a 4 and it becomes a bit, you've got quite a lot of players then sort of in a straight line and maybe not there. But I think if Rocky's struggling to progress the ball forward, then there's no reason why something else. Yeah, no reason why Triantis Rocky can't play the ball to O'Hora and then drop really deep, and Triantis comes in and gets on it and tries to make things happen. And I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that they were trying to stay tight and just sort of so that Yuan and guys could get on the ball. But again, we became really one-dimensional, and it then becomes, if you're a defending team, you're going to go, right, we know they're going to do this and that, and we'll just stick. Whereas if Triantis suddenly drops out, gives Chilvers something to think about, right, he's got a 2v1 now. Well, Hora, what do I do? Does Nisbet follow him? What does Allardyce do? You just start poking and prodding, asking questions and causing them to have to, reassess and communicate and cover each other's spaces. And unfortunately, we just didn't do enough of that in the first half, really.
Aye. So we'll take it to the point where it started to get a bit better. The first goal, obviously, it starts with Triantis nicking the ball off the Ross County player and playing forward from there. So I'll let you take it from there. How did it progress from here?
Yeah, I thought it was worth highlighting this just initial clip because Triantis, I feel like I often give him quite a lot of stick defensively for things, but actually and sort of say that he needs to read danger more, and if he wants to be that number 6, that he needs to do more of that. Exactly what he does here. He comes back, he gets on the other side of Randall, and he doesn't foul. He's patient and he just pinches the ball. And then what he does brilliantly in the next clip is that it's out his feet, and he's got such good awareness that it's not 2, 3, 4 touches. It's I've won it, touch, and he hits that sort of reverse pass into Ellie Yuan. And I think when people question why he's in there, I've seen a lot of stuff on Twitter about him in there.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he's in there, because physically he can put himself about, he can win the ball, and then he's got a really good range. So I think it's good to highlight, because he obviously plays that first pass into Yuan. When Ellie gets on the ball in the next clip, he actually, and this is, you can actually see I actually didn't realise that with the referee with the whistle in his mouth, but when I went back to check my screenshot, it's actually that moment which I think they touched on Sports Scene. So Ellie plays the ball. I would say it's a cross to Triantis and not back.
Yeah. It's the same phase of play, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even though he's gone back the way, I don't think it's not a case. It wasn't a case of resetting and trying to start again. It was part of the same phase, I thought.
And that's where I think Triantis does really, really well, because again, how easy would it have been for him to then stop the ball, turn, maybe play it out to Chris Cadden, and then the fight, and the halftime whistle to go. But what he does here is there's not that pass into Hoylett isn't on when he first gets the ball here, but then he dribbles forward. And he gets into a really good space, and then he just slides it through in for Hoylett in behind, and it's a really, really good pass in between Nisbet. And actually, I kind of thought the chance had gone, to be honest with you, when Hoylett
got not much
down.
On here, is there?
Nah, there's not at all. And Gale makes a couple of, he makes a movement, and then he makes a second movement, and then he sort of just plonks himself kind of here. But he's in front of the defender. And, this is what you get with experience from these guys, is that Hoylett's got the technical ability to just sort of clip that into that area. And Gale's got that attacking sense and just that depth of touch, really, to just guide it. Because obviously as Hoylett lifts it in, Hamilton comes out to claim it, and Gale just nicks in front of him and sort of puts it into the side net. And can't underestimate just how important that goal was for the game.
Yeah, because it would have been, there was still a smattering of boos at halftime, but nothing like what would have happened if that goal hadn't gone in. So it's, as you say, it's a huge moment. It gives everybody a bit of a lift. It changes David Gray's halftime team talk. You've got to think maybe he would have been tempted to make a change or two at halftime, but then obviously getting back into the game, it becomes it's a different story going into the second half. And I think it's just talking about moments going for you, and I think there are so many this season just maybe haven't for Hibs in certain scenarios. And I think you when you talk about these kind of moments, you don't necessarily think about a referee deciding not to blow his whistle for half time, but it just shows you how quickly things can turn on split-second decisions that aren't even from the players. In this instance, it's a referee's decision to not blow the whistle that leads to then Hibs getting that goal. And I mean, obviously, I think you can see from a Ross County perspective why they're probably a wee bit frustrated about that, especially as Don Cowie pointed out that the referee, he goes to blow the whistle, but I think he maybe looks at it, if he's got, he's maybe expecting Yuan to, if he goes way out to Cadden or it goes to Triantis and goes out to Cadden, I think you're right there that the referee would probably stop that. But I think he's within his rights. And Hibs would have been a bit aggrieved if that ball goes into Triantis. He steps forward almost into the final third, and then the referee blows the whistle, because then it would change the narrative almost then, because it would be like, well, that's a promising attack. Really, you've just stopped there. So I think he got it. I think he got it spot on. Do you? I
think so as well. And the clock there says 50 and 42, but this is actually a highlight just from a different angle. But I think it's 11 seconds after the 50th minute that the goal goes in, I think. So, you're not talking like it's a long period of time. And again, and it goes back, like you say, it's those little moments, but it's also with guys like Triantis, and I suppose what Gray wants to do with this team is he wants us to play forward, and he wants us to attack quickly and things like that. And we have been trying that for a number of weeks, trying to do these things, and haven't maybe been getting what we deserve. And in that moment, you just get that bit of luck that allows us to get in at halftime. Because you're right, I think 1-0 down at halftime, it would have been a huge team talk, probably some changes. I'm not quite sure what he would have potentially done. But yeah, that, and then the atmosphere would have really changed.
Yeah. So on to the second half, we'll get to the penalty incidents in due course. I'll just tee that up there on the screen. But there's plenty happened before that. Hibs should have went ahead, to be honest, long before the penalty. It was those two two chances in a matter of seconds. The first one falls to Ellie Yuan, next one falls to Joe Newell. Were you kind of thinking at that point, oh God, is this going to be one of these days where it just doesn't go?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose part of me was like enthused that we had come out the traps and we were going for it. And obviously, that you wouldn't want it to fall to anybody else except Ellie in that position. He is a proper, air swipe. I've done that at five-a-sides plenty times. And then I think even more frustratingly, as soon as Neil ran up to it, I was thinking, please don't hit this over the bar. and obviously he clears it. And there was then fans kind of hands on their heads, but then you were like, well, we've obviously come out, we're going for it. And if you think about the Celtic game before, we came out the second half and we were unable to sort of stay in the game really. So it kind of enthused from there. I would say it's sort of, and it's probably important to say actually, and just finishing off the first half, that Smith had made another decent save from Nisbet, which kept us kept going.
That's true.
Yeah, he made some 64 minutes, the subs. I thought it was an interesting one, Iredale going off, and Hoylett going off, and obviously Obita and Campbell coming on. And then we sort of reverted to more back to like a 4-2-3-1, which I thought was really interesting, that he went down that route. I suppose it then allowed, you get Campbell's energy sort of in the middle of the pitch. And then obviously being able to push Nicky Cadden a bit further forward, which we spoke about, and then obviously Ellie. So it was a pretty brave move, and again it probably allowed Gale to sort of stay a bit higher up, knowing there was a couple of extra bodies getting closer to the ball or near him. So an interesting set of substitutions, and then obviously that was on about the 64th minute, and then obviously we get our first penalty here. And I mean, I caught a little bit of Don Cowie and stuff, and he was pretty brutally honest, wasn't he, about these decisions after the game, saying the referee spoke to us about them and it's just lazy defending. And I sort of empathise with him because we've been on the end of a couple of these decisions. However, I think both of them were incredibly blatant. This one, I did wonder if Gale had kind of done that thing that veteran strikers do, is they sort of lock their arm down on the defender and sort of look like they're falling to the ground, getting dragged, but they're actually pulling the defender down with them. But I actually think you can see there, if you're a defender and the ball's going over the top and you're in this position now, you're in a lot of trouble. And then if you go to that next clip, it's... Yeah, I mean... that sort of says it all. I'm sure
the way that the defender's facing there compared to the position of the ball tells a really good story, doesn't it?
Yeah,
this was Harman, wasn't it? This one, and the second one was Leak, and I think it was the brilliant bit after this is the sort of strength of the protest from Harman afterwards. Which was I think somebody. It might have been on Sports Scene. One of the pundits was doing a bit of lip reading and was trying to that Harman was maybe trying to tell the referee, he was pulling me. But I mean, I think it's fairly conclusive that wasn't quite the case.
And that's why I went back to check it, because I thought I wouldn't be surprising if Gale was cute and sort of. But here, I mean, for reference, the ball's just kind of dropping behind, like sort of in front of Gale at this point, just kind of in front of him. And if you're in that position now, it's more like a rugby tackle.
There we go. That's even better.
There you go. So again, that's not a great place to be in. So 100% a penalty. And I think everybody was very confident with Nicky Cadden stepping up, and unfortunately, it looks like he just never caught it. As well as he hoped, and it just went straight down the middle. And actually, he was unlucky. The spin it came off Hamilton. It kind of spun right out for a corner, and you could just see how frustrated he was in that effort.
A bit unfortunate. I could have spun anywhere, to be honest. But I mean, Hibs didn't have to wait long for another penalty. It was just a couple of minutes later, really, that they were awarded another one. And it kind of interestingly, I remember the referee, he dished out a couple of warnings to Ross County before this happened, but they obviously went unheeded.
Yeah, just before it, he calls Campbell and Leak over to basically kind of warn them from the pushing in. I kind of want to give Josh Campbell a bit of credit here, because he's in there, but he's with his hands and this sounds maybe a bizarre thing to point out, but he's not pulling the jersey. His hands are quite clear there, and it's quite clear they're just on Leek. Do you know what I mean? And he's not grabbing or pulling or pushing or anything like that. And if you go into the next clip, he sort of is able to kind of spin away from Leek. He kind of leans into him and sort of spins off him at that point. And you can see as the ball gets into this area here, Leek just has the hand on the jersey, and then I think I can't remember if I put in the third clip here, but he pulls. It's just a clear pull there, and you can't really see, but the referee is looking directly at that. And because Campbell at this point is going for some sort of overhead kick movement, he's already on the way down anyway.
Yeah.
So it's one of those. It is, I suppose, it's kind of soft in terms of the shirt pull. You know, he's already going down at this point, but it's a clear penalty, and it's just on Cowie said it's just really, really silly because, you know, Leek's got the physicality to just shove Campbell out of these positions without resorting to grabbing the shirt, and it must be very, very frustrating. But we've been there giving them away for these things. So yeah,
I think for a bit of consistency's sake, before somebody jumps on and says, "But you said the one that Hibs conceded against Dundee United wasn't a penalty," but I think, as my understanding of it here is, you know, Leek is directly affecting Campbell's ability to play the ball here, whereas I think the grievance where it was Kugarevich that gave the one against Dundee United, he wasn't doing that. So I think this is the key difference that they've maybe tried to stress, where these incidents where somebody's not affecting an attacker's ability to play the ball, they're going to take a more, it may be different if the referee spots something in real time, but it's ones who aren't going to go to VAR. Obviously didn't need VAR in this instance, but I think that's the key difference here. He's stopping Campbell being able to play the ball.
Yeah, I think so. I'm sure the Kurevich one, the ball sort of clears him, and he is, there's a shirt pull, but then he lets go and the guy goes down. But, obviously the ball's then not come back across the goal, so it's quite difficult to say, oh, well, he's really impacting it. Whereas here, the ball's going to Campbell. I think, would he have spun and volleyed this in the net? I'm not quite sure. But either way, he does well to sort of get himself in that position and sort of feel the contact and then go down. So and then we've not got it clipped here, but then a very, very confident penalty from Eli Yuan, just that slow run up that I think has everybody panicking, but a really, really great strike and just clips the inside of the post and goes in. But fantastic.
I think he's never going to do anything other than the slow run up. Eli Yuan, is it? I mean, he enjoys a bit of showmanship, a bit of drama, doesn't he? That's just the kind of player. I felt quite confident that he was going to score. To be honest, I know the run up, that run up does put the fear of God into people. But it was a great finish. I know it goes in off the edge of the post, but I mean, it's still right bang in the corner, and it's such a clean strike. He's kind of got it away from the goalkeeper, who has guessed right. So he gets the bit of fortune he deserves there with it going in off the post as opposed to bouncing all the way back out. Obviously, the next thing to demonstrate is the third goal. But before we get to that, again, there was plenty that happened. Shape was changed again, I think, back to the three at the back. Abita involved in that, and obviously it's kind of a response to what Ross County were trying to do, because I think by the end they'd thrown Jordan White and Ronan Hale on, and that was them just going for broke. So I think Hibs kind of had to do something in response to that.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously going to the 4-2-3-1 gave us that sort of extra attacking impetus, and then Ronan Hale comes on. Jordan White's been on just before that. They're then obviously going, right, we're just going to get that ball launched into the box, and I think you are kind of square pegs round holes at that point, but Abita's capable of playing in that sort of left centre back role. He's got the pace, he's got a decent bit of height, and then of course it becomes trickier towards the end because O'Hora obviously goes off with an injury, so Triantis has to drop back into that space. But actually Triantis had a couple of clearances in that kind of flurry of set pieces from Ross County towards the end. So we ended up finishing sort of a tiny little bit all over the place. But actually, do you know who I thought? I also thought Josh Campbell from some of the set pieces as well. He was in one of those zonal positions, ironically enough, and he actually made a couple of contacts in terms of clearing the ball. And we were fairly resolute in doing so. And then obviously, it goes on to this kind of goal in the final part. And I mean, it's a really sort of abysmal bit of play from Brown in terms of, I mean, going back to Jack Hamilton's not always also another good avenue to try and keep the ball, because he's quite shaky with his feet, but he tries to hit a long ball and massively underhits it. Obviously, Campbell sort of knocks it back first time, and I remember seeing it like when it was live. I thought that's definitely going to get a VAR check, but there's no way that's a foul. Ellie just uses his body well. He just sort of leans in, and Brown sort of flies in. And to be fair to the referee, when it goes to the VAR check and he goes to the screen, you're just thinking, he's just going to disallow that. But
because it's one of those ones, I think, when it's slowed down, you think they may be more inclined to give it as a foul in that sense, because you see the wee nudge in slower motion, but when you watch it in real time, it's not a foul, is it?
You can see Brown, he's flailing here, he's hit a bad pass, it's counter-attack, he knows he's under pressure and he's sprinting in, so any sort of like nudge, he's going to be off balance here. And the fact that Ellie was just able to stay on his feet shows that he wasn't sort of clattering into him or anything like that. So I think you've got to give credit to the ref for that. And then after that, it's one of those things where Ellie, he's had his moments this season where even last week against Celtic, I'm sure, in fact, no, earlier on in the game, or maybe later, is it maybe after this or just before, he kind of runs through and he just overhits it and he could square it to Boyle. It's maybe just after this, and
it was after
but you see in this moment here, it's like he does so well. It's a perfect little weighted pass. Campbell times his run really well, and then it's it's a really, really good finish from Josh Campbell, because it's how many times have we seen us get into the final third and just balloon that over the bar, or take a poor touch and the keeper get it, and things like that, especially over the last couple of weeks or so. So I think it's fair play to him for sprinting all that way, getting in, getting his body over the ball, keeping it low, and I just seeing out the game, and I'm really chuffed for him, because it's been a really tricky first half of the season for him.
Yeah, it has been, hasn't it? I think he deserved a wee moment like that. Obviously got his goal against Motherwell, and he was kind of all-round effective when he came on, Josh Campbell. You were saying there, kind of his contribution defensively, and then he's got the energy and the timing and the composure to put that away and make the 3 points safe. Just to bring it back a wee bit, obviously we talked there about the change, O'Hora coming off. We just got a comment a wee bit earlier, and I don't want to finish without addressing that. Have you got any information regarding Warren O'Hora's injury? Big concern for the Aberdeen game. Obviously, it could be a big concern. We're not sure yet. David Gray said after the game that it was too early to really make any sort of assessment on it, or really any sort of outlook. Probably Friday before we find out about that. It'll be assessed over the next few days. Probably has been already, and then David Gray, I'd imagine, will have news to share on that at his press conference on Friday. I think probably the only way it comes out before then is if Hibs issue an update, but I think everybody would hope that doesn't happen, because generally clubs only put out those kind of updates for really serious injuries, as they did with Kieran Bowie. So probably Friday, when David Gray speaks to the media ahead of the Aberdeen game, we'll get some information on that. But I mean, it is a concern going into such a big game, though, isn't it?
Yeah, and it goes back to what we said at the top of the show. That's just another. I mean, I don't think you can play three at the back, really. I mean, unless you put Triantis back there, you could, I suppose, you could put Obita in, but then you'd have to kind of shift Iredale central and then Rocky to the right. Like, it starts to become, you know what I mean, quite awkward in terms of the balance there. So I wonder if going back to a 4 is maybe something we see. Obviously, Ekpiteta's still far away, you know, in terms of coming back. So, and that's just, I suppose, the frustration again is just that's another player injured, so we have to tweak things again. No real consistency, and although O'Hora hasn't been sort of on fire or that, he's been turning in like quite consistent performances, which sometimes go unnoticed, but is really important. So I'm interested to see what we do for the Aberdeen game, whether we do drop Triantis back and put Kwon into midfield and just try and stick with, again, like we have done the last few games, like stick with that shape, stick with as many players who have been playing in that shape as possible. But of course, you know, Triantis at centre to right. I mean, right centre back for Triantis, I think I could see him performing okay in there, especially on the ball. But obviously, you would be worried about the pace that Aberdeen have.
Well, that's where
which
they
we
hurt
saw.
him in the last game,
Yeah,
wasn't it? I know he was other side Shaden Morris, but he was the guy who came on and made the real
yeah.
difference. But then that, it kind of applies on the other side as well, doesn't it? That you'd think they would, if that indeed was the case, that would probably be an area they would target. So it's
I
big
sort of wondered.
decisions, that.
Yeah, I sort of wondered whether he would maybe be tempted to play Obita sort of left centre back and Nicky Cadden left wing back, or something so that we've got quite a lot of pace in those areas to potentially deal with that. Like the Aberdeen threat, and no Miller as well. Again, he's got good pace and can kind of got good recovery runs. So it's a lot of questions for him, and I don't know Kurevich potentially. I don't know if he'll maybe be back on the bench or hopefully maybe being able to come back in, because we're still quite light in that attacking area as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a case of digging in over this festive period, isn't it? Again, it's
Yep.
it's another test of fortitude and character for this team. But they passed one at the weekend. They've passed a few over the last couple of weeks, so we'll just have to wait and see whether they're up to it. But it's a big game, a tough game, really tough game against a team that have had a really good season so far. But I mean, Hibs from the game at Easter Road sort of showed not necessarily any reason to go into that game with any sort of fear or anything. There was really very little between the two teams in the last game, wasn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we showed that we can, it was really that second half when they've got, really, really good depth in their squad with their recruitment. So they're able to change things up. And whereas we are quite limited off the bench at the minute. And it was that second half really that we just kind of struggled to keep the intensity up. But we were able to grind out a result, and I don't know if it'll be slightly different away from home. Aberdeen on the ball, I'm sure it'll be us looking to try and hit on the counter, and we've certainly got the ability to do that with Johan and things like that. So big game, leading into the derby. So it'll certainly be one we want to go up and try and get a good performance, and I would comfortably take a point at this stage.
Comfortably take a point. I think, yeah, it wouldn't be a bad result, I don't think. But the Aberdeen game is for another day. We're going to leave it there for just now, folks. Just again, before we go, if you're watching us on YouTube and you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, please do consider joining us. Helps us push towards a target of 1,000 subscribers. But for yourself, it just means if you are tuning into these videos, I know we sometimes fluctuate the time here and there, just when we can get guys on. It just means you get a notification every time we go live and you don't miss anything. So yeah, if you've not subscribed as yet, please do consider hitting that button. We really do appreciate it. But we're going to leave it there. As always, Craig, thank you for joining us. Thank you very much for your insight. We'll be back later in the week to preview the Aberdeen game. But for now, folks, again, thank you for joining us. Hope you have a good week, and we'll speak to you again very, very soon. Cheers.
Thanks.